Hello, I'm going to be showing you how to use the Evvie app and the Evvie portal in this video. I'm going to show you the whole process from start to finish, where we are going from clocking in and out on a phone or tablet as an employee, all the way to the employee going into the Evvie portal to review and approve those shifts, to going in as the employer at the end to approval lock those shifts. I'll talk about all the different nuances of this process and what things look like click by click for you. If there's a specific section you want to watch, there are timestamps below, and you can go to exactly the section you want. You can stop and start, pause, rewind as many times as you need in order to make sure that you're going through the system correctly and clearly. Before we get started, just kind of an overview of the landscape here. We have the Evvie app, which is an app for phone or tablet, free from any app store, called Evvie. It is from a developer called Annkisam, Annkissam. So if you have trouble searching in perhaps the Apple App Store for the Evvie app, Evvie, you could search by Annkisam, and usually it'll come up for people. So it is a free app, and it's only for employees. Only employees need the Evvie app. Employers do not, because employers do not clock in and out. As you'll see when I show you, the Evvie app is truly a fancy timer. All it does is clock you in and clock you out as an employee. The Evvie app cannot show you shifts you've already done. It doesn't allow you to edit any shifts. You can't fix a mistake in the Evvie app. The app itself truly is just the here and now, clocking you in and out in real time as an employee while you're working. The Evvie portal, on the other hand, is an online website. So there's the app, which is literally an app, right, for phone or tablet. And then there's the Evvie portal, which is a website. You can access it on a phone or tablet. It's a website like anything else. You could use Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, your internet browser of choice. And it's a website that you log into as the employee, and employers log into the Evvie portal as well. Evvie app, only for employees. Evvie portal for both employees and employers. And the Evvie portal is where you can go in to approve and approval lock time. It's where you can go in to edit mistakes, delete mistaken shifts, create brand new ones from scratch. And I'll show you all of that step by step. But the first thing I'm going to do is show you the Evvie app. Before we get started, a few just quick notes. If the two main issues you may experience as a new person using these systems are related to either just account setup and logging in or service codes. Account setup and logging in, these are issues of not receiving your welcome email from noreply@annkisam.com inviting you to create your login information for these systems. If you didn't receive a welcome email, you'll want to contact the ARC Central Chesapeake region, primarily through the ticketing system, so that we have a written record of your issue and request. So that we can get you set up. If you go into Evvie and you see you're not linked to any FIs, that's fiscal intermediaries. And again, that's another thing you would want to contact us about to make sure your email address is correct in our system. Related to service codes, there are two main reasons you may not be seeing service codes. When you log into the Evvie app as an employee or the Evvie portal as an employee or employer, you should see your service codes. These are things like personal supports, respite, CD, things like that. If you don't see them, or you don't see all of them, right, that's another situation in which you would want to contact the ARC Central Chesapeake region directly, so we can figure out why that is happening for you. So if that's you, go ahead and place that customer service ticket or make that phone call to the ARC Central Chesapeake region. But getting started with the Evvie app itself, what I'm going to be showing you is first a video tutorial of the Evvie app. And I'm going to be pausing it here and there to give you some extra information and insights into the screens that you're looking at. So let me pull that up for you, and we'll get started looking at the Evvie app for employees only.
Capture that are easy, quick, and secure. In this video, we will go over the basics of using the Evvie mobile app, including getting started with the app, logging into Evvie, how to record your shifts or visits, offline shift submission, and some basic troubleshooting within the app. A quick note, workers use the Evvie mobile app, participants and representatives do not. If you are not a worker, you can skip this video and proceed to the next video in the series using the Evvie Portal web app. You will need an FMS1 username and password to use the Evvie app.
This is something that, like I said, is related to that welcome email. The username and password that employees use for the Evvie app is the same username and password that they'll use for the Evvie portal. This FMS1 username and password is something you create through a welcome email that you should have received from noreply@ankasam.com. Most employees and employers who have already been with the ARC in 2022 would have received their welcome email from noreply@ankasam.com back on December 23rd, 2022. If you haven't received one, or you are a new employee since then, or a new employer since then, and you haven't received one, contact the ARC Central Chesapeake region so that we can get that set up for you. The username and password is the same for the Evvie app as it is for the Evvie portal. Remember, the app is only for employees. The employer login information, even though it works in the Evvie portal, will not work in the Evvie app.
Android users should download the Evvie app from Google Play. iPhone and iPad users should download the Evvie app from the App Store. After installing the app on your mobile device or tablet, locate the app and click the icon to launch it. The first time you use the Evvie mobile app, you'll be asked to share your location. Click Allow while using app. Evvie will log your location at the start and end of your shift. It is not tracking your location during shifts. These locations are part of the information that must be collected to verify your shifts with EVV.
Some people are worried that Evvie, the app, is tracking them, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. However, the Evvie app is not tracking you so much as just recording your location the exact second you clock in and the second you clock out. It does not know where you are in between. And you don't have to be in the same place at the beginning versus the end of your shift. You can be in two different places. Evvie is called Evvie because of EVV, which is electronic visit verification, which is basically saying I am where I say I am when I say I'm there. You clocking in is that when, right? And Evvie also just quick records the where of where you clocked in as well. That's what makes it EVV compliant, and there's no real way around that. So the first time you use the app, you'll have to share your location, and the Evvie app will remember that the whole time. If you're having trouble having Evvie share your location with Evvie, you may need to go into the settings of your phone and look into the app permissions for Evvie and location sharing itself.
After you allow Evvie to use your location, click the blue FMS1 button to sign in. You will be redirected to FMS1 to sign in. If prompted, click Continue. You will now sign into FMS1 using your email and password that you set up earlier. Click Log In. The first time you use the app, you'll be asked to authorize it. Click the green Authorize button. On the next screen, you will need to select the FI you are working for.
FI means Fiscal Intermediary. For you, the fiscal intermediary is the ARC Central Chesapeake region. So again, this very first time that you log into the Evvie app as an employee, you'll need to choose the ARC Central Chesapeake region here.
For most users, there will only be one option to select. If you work for more than one participant, and those participants are served by different FIs, you'll want to select the FI associated with the participant you want to log a shift for. After selecting the FI, press Done in the upper right corner. The Evvie mobile app is now set up, and you are ready to start logging your shifts. The first screen you see once you've logged in and selected the FI is a list of the participants you work for. Many of you will have only one person listed. Some of you may work for two or more different people. To start a shift, click the checkbox next to the participant you want to log a shift for, then click Start Shift. You will need to click yes in the pop-up to confirm the selected participant is accurate. The shift has now begun and Evvie is tracking the time.
You're already clocked in. If you can see the clock on the screen, that means that you are clocked in and Evvie is actively recording your time. As she's on this page, you'll see that it starts to go up to 1 minute, and the longer you have the screen open, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, etc. I realize she's shown you a lot of screens so far, right? She's coming in here as somebody who has never logged into the Evvie app before. But once you have signed in for the first time, the next time you open the Evvie app, it will ask you to sign in, select your employer, and click Start Shift, and you'll already be on this screen. Just those 3 simple clicks, and you'll already be here with a shift open, recording your shift. If by accident you had started this shift and you didn't mean to and you need to cancel the shift, or perhaps you have no service codes like I mentioned before and you need to end this shift, you can click the cancel button in the top left corner. Again, if this was a mistake or if you can't actually successfully end the shift.
If you accidentally start recording a shift, you can click the cancel button in the top left corner. No EVV data will be tracked or saved. You will need to fill out the fields on the shift tracking page at some point before completing the shift.
She'll say it in a minute, but I want to say it too, that the fields here on her video tutorial are a little bit different than the fields that you will see in the ARC Central Chesapeake Region's Evvie app. On ours, for example, there are only 2 required fields that employees need to fill out. And those 2 required fields for you are marked with red asterisks, little red stars. Yes, there are technically 3 required fields. That first one, consumer enrollment ID, should automatically populate. There should already be all the letters that you need in there. You shouldn't have to type anything into that first box. It's the 2 empty fields with red asterisks that you do need to put information in there for. And those 2 required fields are location and service codes. Here you can see she has a start location and end location. She also has service codes. For you, you just have 1 location box, right? And 1 service code box. Location, ours is not recording start and end necessarily. Ours is more of a, where did you spend the majority of your shift? Would you say you spent the majority of the shift at the person's home or not at their home, out in the community, or even remote is an option? There's no right or wrong way to fill out the location field. It's whatever makes the most sense to you, right? How do you define home? How do you define community or remote? For remote, this could be something like virtual supports, but there could also be other circumstances if you were saying, you were out of state or out of the country, perhaps remote would make sense for that. Again, it's whatever makes most sense to you for that shift in the moment. Where did you spend the majority of your time, would you say? Service code is service codes, personal support, respite, behavioral supports, community development, anything like that, right? There are so many service codes. And when you click on service code as an employee, you should see the service codes that you are approved for in the budget. So later when I show you a test employee, a practice employee named Daniel, Daniel is approved for personal supports, respite, and behavioral supports. When you click on service code, you should see whatever you are approved for as well. And yes, it does write it out as the whole words instead of using abbreviated codes or letters. So on this screen, when you clock in, you'll put in the location as home, community, or remote, and you'll put in the service code for that shift.
The fields include information like start and end location, service code, notes, and goals. The fields on the shift tracking page are unique for each FI, so the fields shown here may be slightly different for your program.
In terms of the notes field, it is an optional field on our app. However, if you are a support broker and you clock in and out, or you submit paper timesheets, if you have in the past, or via Paycom, you would use this notes field as your support in place of a support broker documentation form. You can simply put in the notes field what you did during that shift, and that way you do not have to turn in a support broker documentation form. This is only, again, for support brokers who are paid as employees by the ARC Central Chesapeake region, not support brokers who receive vendor payments.
You can update these fields at any point during the shift, but must do so before ending the shift. At the end of your shift, click End Shift in the top right corner to finalize and submit a completed shift. After clicking End Shift, you'll need to confirm that you want to end the shift, and you will have to select one of three options: End and Complete Shift, End and Start New Shift, or Cancel.
Few quick notes about these two main options here. End and complete a shift, and end and start a new shift. End and complete a shift is saying that you're done for the day, right? You've worked your 8 hours and you're ending and completing the shift. You're done. Or maybe you're done with your morning shift. You've worked from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and there's going to be a long gap between you come back and start working again at 5 p.m., right? You would end and complete that shift at 10 a.m. because there's going to be a long gap. End and start a new shift is if you're ending a shift and starting a new one right away again with the same employer. This would be especially if you're changing service codes. Let's say you were doing 6 hours of personal supports and 2 hours of respite back to back for one 8-hour shift. You're working 2 different service codes in one 8-hour day. You would clock in and do your 6 hours of personal support. And at the end of those 6 hours, you would click End and Start a new shift. You would then just change the service code to respite and go about your day. At the end of that 2 hours, then you would end and complete the shift because that 8-hour shift would be over.
Selecting Cancel here will return you to the shift. If you are not connected to the internet, the shift will be stored in the account page until you have connected to the internet again. Instructions for submitting these stored shifts will be covered in the next portion of this video. If you are connected to the internet at the end of the shift will be automatically sent to the Evvie portal website within the next 30 to 60 seconds.
She is going to show you how to record shifts with multiple participants that you're working with at the exact same time. Most people, 99% of people, are not permitted to do this. In most cases, this would be fraud. So please do not do this unless you have that very special approval from the DDA. So if this doesn't apply to you, which is very likely, just ignore the next 15 seconds of this video.
If you are working with more than one participant at a time, select all participants you are working with before clicking Start Shift. Once the shift has begun, you can then toggle between participants to enter the field information for each of them. If you are not connected to the internet when you end a shift, it will not be sent automatically. Instead, all of the shifts that could not be sent will be stored in the mobile app. You will need to connect to the internet and complete these steps to submit the shifts to the Evvie portal. After starting up the app, from the Participant Select screen, access your account screen by clicking the person icon in the upper right corner. Once on the account screen, you will be able to see the number of shifts that are waiting to be transmitted. If any visits are waiting to be transmitted, click the blue Upload button.
I also want to point out, just while we are here on this account screen, is that there is this log out button at the top right corner. To actually log out of Evvie completely, you would click this button and click log out. If it's just you using the Evvie app on your phone as an employee, there is no reason for you to really ever log out. The only time you would want to definitely log out of Evvie is if there are multiple employees all sharing the same device. Some people say, we have one dedicated tablet at the house that all employees clock in and out on, so we can make sure everybody's being successful. That's fine. That's a great idea. You just want to make sure that between shifts, all employees are logging out completely. That way there's not one employee who stays logged in the whole time and everybody else is clocking in and out accidentally as them, right?
Typically, Any pending shifts will automatically transmit as soon as an internet connection is available and the app is opened. You should see a message stating that your shift has been saved successfully. You will also notice a link to the Evvie Portal website on your account page, which you can click for easy access. If you've forgotten your FMS1 password, it is easy to reset. Click on the FMS1 button as if you were signing into the app. Below the username and password fields, there is a link for Forgot Your Password. Just click that link, enter your email address, and click Send Me Reset Password Instructions. You'll get an email in a few minutes with a link to reset the password.
All right, I'm not going to be showing you another video. Next up, I'm going to be showing you what it looks like to go into the Evvie portal as both an employee and an employer. As you can see, the Evvie app truly is a fancy timer. All it does is clock you in and clock you out, record your location and service code, and that's it. When it's connected to the internet, it sends that shift information right to the portal. Both the employees and employers need to go into the Evvie portal. And before we get started, I do want to give you a quick overview of how this approval process for time works, because ultimately we want employees to get paid, right? There is basically a 3-step process here. First, employees have to submit their time, right? They have to clock in and out. When a shift is clocked in and out, it is called submitted, right? The shift has been clocked in, it's been clocked out, and submitted to the portal, right? When Evvie is connected to the internet, sends it to the portal. It's been submitted. Then there's 2 more steps to make sure that this shift gets paid. First, the shift needs to be approved by someone, and then the shift needs to be approval locked by someone. Approval locked shifts get paid. Approval locked means it's made it through this whole process of first being submitted, it's been created, it's then been approved, and approval locked. What is going to be most common for most people, and what we would recommend for most teams, is that this employee submits their time, right? They clock in and out as themselves. The employee then goes in to approve their time and also do other things like adjusting their shift or denying a mistake or creating any shifts they forgot about, right? Making sure the time card is approved and perfect, right? You want, as an employee, you want your time card to be correct so that your employer can go in at the end and approval lock that shift. The employer has then that final review step that locks it in and sends it to the ARC Central Chesapeake Region's payroll department. But there are multiple ways of thinking about this, and that's part of why it's hard to explain. It's a very flexible system. That flexibility is great, but you also want to make sure that in your team, you have really clear, defined expectations about whose job it is to do what step along the way so nobody gets confused. Let me explain. I've told you that what you should probably do is employee submits, employee approves, employer approval locks. But you could do it other ways. You could do employee submits, employer approves, employee approval locks. You could do employer submits, employer approves, employee approval locks. There are any number of ways to do this. It's 3 steps with 2 people who share these 3 steps, right? What the system will not let you do is something like employee submits, employee approves, employee approval locks. It will not let the same person do all 3 steps because the system is built on the assumption that you want checks and balances, that you want that kind of oversight and accountability. And I realize that in family and staff situations, yes, it can feel a little weird, especially if you're logging in using multiple accounts, right? But you do have to think about it too for folks who don't have family and staff, who do hire outside employees, right, outside of their family to come in and support them. Of course, in that situation, you would want oversight, right? You would want checks and balances. So you do have to keep that in mind. That's part of why the system operates the way it does. So what I'm going to be showing you is logging into the Evvie portal first as an employee, a test employee named Daniel, and then as a test employer named Corey. I have already signed into the Evvie app on my phone as Daniel, the test employee, so that I could create some shifts this morning, right? Some practice shifts for us to show you in the portal. So those shifts have been submitted by Daniel, the employee. Now I'm going to log into the portal as Daniel to show you how to approve those shifts and adjust them, deny them, all of that, so that we have a perfect time card sent to Corey, the employer. We're going to go in then as Corey, the employer, to the Evvie portal and approval lock those shifts to make sure Daniel gets paid. So let's get started. First, let me show you the login screen. This is the main login screen for FMS Engine. You're going to hear you've been hearing a lot of words, right? FMS One, FMS Engine, Evvie App, Evvie Portal, Ankasam. It's all part of the same whole, right? That password and username you used for the Evvie App as an employee is the same username and password you will use here for the Evvie Portal to log in and approve your time. Now, this right here, this URL is the staging one. It's for demos and practice, like what I'm showing you now. This one here is the correct URL for both employees and employers to use. And I would highly recommend bookmarking this page, right? Clicking the little star and bookmarking this page so that you always have easy access to this login screen. But I am not going to be showing you the real version. I'm going to be logging into the test version to show you Daniel and Corey. So you can see I have it bookmarked as well. From my bookmarked page, I'm going to click this big blue sign in with FMS One button. And you'll see here on this screen, it'll ask for my email and password. This is the same email and password as the Evvie app. When I go to put in my email, you can see it already remembers my two accounts. Here's our test employee, Daniel, and our test employee, Corey. Some of you may also have both sets of login, both the employee and employer login saved on the same device. That's fine. And I'm basically going to be doing what you may be doing too, right? And logging in on the same device as both people. So here we have the ARC Evvie Test 2. This is Daniel, the employee, and we're going to log in to approve our time. When I log into FMS Engine, you can see here I have my Evvie portal. I can tell this is an employee account because all I see is the Evvie portal. If this were an employer account, I would have the Evvie portal, but I would also have the participant dashboard. And we'll talk about that when we get to the employer screen. But right now we're going to go into the Evvie portal. When I click on this button right now, there's this loading screen. You can see the page is loading. That will go away. Right? Please do not click that sign in login button. We are having the developer remove that. But here we are successfully logged in on the Evvie portal landing page as Daniel, the employee. Scrolling down here, you can see I have a bunch of shifts, all in the submitted status. You can see here's Daniel, the employee, and Corey, the employer. Here's our shifts, start days and times. And the status is submitted. Like I told you, I made these shifts this morning, so we'd have a few to play with here in the system. And you can see that they all have this submitted status. They're only in this very first step, right? You could come in every day to look at your submitted shifts and turn them into approved, or you could come in once a week, or you could come in at the end of the pay period, whatever makes most sense for you. But here we are as Daniel, the employee, looking at our submitted shifts for the week. And as you can see, there's nothing for me to click or edit on this page. This is just a summary screen. To actually begin approving these shifts, because remember, as an employee, our goal is to move shifts from submitted to approved. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. At the bottom of my screen, I'm going to see View All Shifts and View My Weekly Timesheet. View All Shifts is where I will go to one by one approve each individual shift. This is also where I could go to adjust a shift. Maybe on Wednesday, I went to clock out and realized I never clocked in, right? And I need to adjust that shift. Or maybe I need to deny some shifts. My nephew grabbed my phone and accidentally clocked me in and out several times. I need to go delete. I need to deny those shifts. Or maybe I completely forgot to clock in and out on Tuesday, and I need to create that shift from scratch. Or maybe I was on paid time off or holiday, vacation, sick and safe leave, something I would never clock in and out in real time, but I still need to be paid, so I need to create that shift from scratch. All of those kinds of tasks you do here in View All Shifts, going one by one. View My Weekly Timesheet is where you can go to batch approve. Instead of going one by one, you approve in a batch all the shifts for a week at a time, or a pay period at a time. And I'll show you how to do that too. But first, let's start in View All Shifts, where we can go one by one to approve, adjust, deny, and create brand new shifts from scratch. Here on the listing shifts page, you can see that the very first thing is this big blue button at the top, create a new shift. This is where you would go to create that new shift from scratch for if you completely forgot, or maybe you're logging some paid time off or vacation or something like that. Down below, you'll see here are all of our shifts from before, and you can see they're even showing us shifts from last week's trainings as well. But here we are, and you can see that these are all those same shifts, Corey and Daniel, start date and time, status submitted. And here you can see now there's a view shift button next to each one. This view shift button is what you'll click to enter into each specific shift to approve, adjust, or deny it. So let's just start at the top. Let's go to this shift right here. And this one we will just approve. This one's good to go. Let's pretend instead of 0 hours, 0 minutes, this is actually an 8-hour shift that we're approving. It's displaying the shift right now. And then we can see that the status of the shift is submitted. And we can see that the employer, or they call them consumers, it's the same, employer, participant, consumer is Corey, and the employee is Daniel. Scrolling down in the shift details, it shows you the hours, minutes, and seconds of the shift. This one was a 34-second shift, but again, let's pretend this was more like an 8-hour shift. It also shows you the start day and time and the end day and time zone. It shows you the service code that was selected was respite, and that the location was at home. It's pulling all of this information from the Evvie app. I logged in as Daniel, the employee, and clocked in and out this morning. So this is showing you that in the app, in the location field, I chose home, and in the service code field, I chose respite, right? It's pulling all of that information. Next, we can see that this shift is EVV compliant. And it's EVV compliant because it came from the Evvie app. We know my real start and end time, and we know where I was as well when I clocked in and out. Here in the shift history, we can see Daniel, the employee, has submitted this shift. It's just in this very first step, right? And down here at the bottom, I have my 3 main options. I can approve the shift, adjust the shift, or deny the shift. We said the shift is good to go, so I'm going to approve the shift. Here is the shift you are approving. Status submitted, Daniel employee, start date and time. Gives you one last chance to kind of review these essential details of the shift before at the bottom you can approve it. Before you can approve, you do need to declare under penalty of perjury that all hours worked are true and correct. It will make you declare under penalty of perjury that everything is true and correct every time you approve or adjust a shift. This is another good reason to do this in a batch, right? Entering a phone number and comments are optional. I've clicked my box. The shift is good to go, so I'm going to submit my approval. We'll see now that the shift now has a status of approved, and it shows us all the same information. We've got Corey and Daniel. We've got the hours, minutes, seconds, day and time. Service code is still respite. Location is at home. We haven't changed anything, right? It's still EVV compliant. It came from Evvie, and we can see that Daniel has submitted. Daniel has approved. Boom, boom. We've made it through the first 2 steps of this process. Daniel, as an employee, is done with this shift. He has done his job of approving it. It's now off to Corey, the employer, to approval lock it. Now that Daniel has approved this shift, Corey, his employer, will get an email saying, hey, Daniel approved this shift. Do you want to go in and approval lock it? So again, this is another good reason to do things in a batch as opposed to one by one. So Corey only gets one email instead of 12. But let's go back, and next we're going to adjust a shift. To do that, let's go to View All Shifts. We're back on that page with the Create a New Shift button and all of our shifts listed here. You can see here's the shift we just approved, right? Shift 506. We took it and we approved it. Next, let's go to this one and adjust it. You know what happened here? I went to clock out at 8:45 a.m. This was a night shift. And I went to clock out and realized I never clocked in. That's what you get when you're supposed to clock in at midnight, right? I forgot. So I just clocked in and out real fast at 8:45. So at least we would have a record here in the portal for me to edit. And at least we have my real ending time, right? So let's go view this shift and adjust it. Again, here we see all the same information about the shift. It's been submitted. We have Corey and Daniel, the hours, minutes, and seconds of the shift, day and time, the service code, and the location that I had selected all from the Evvie app when I clocked out. We can see right now the shift is EVV compliant. We are about to make it not EVV compliant. We are about to change the start time. When we change that start time, we are making the shift not EVV compliant because now we won't know the real time that I actually clocked in down to the second. All we'll have is my word for it, right? So let's come down here, and instead of approving it, this time we are going to adjust it. When we go to adjust the shift, here's the shift you are adjusting. It'll ask us, what about the shift do we want to change? And it will list all the information about the shift. Starting at the top, it's basically going to ask you what happened first, right? Why are you adjusting this shift? And usually it's going to be that you forgot to clock in or forgot to clock out, right? Or maybe you chose the wrong service code. You put in respite, but it really should have been personal supports. Or maybe there was some other kind of user error, right? But usually it's just you're adjusting a shift because you forgot. The reason, right now, there are only these two reasons. And yes, they are probably the least likely reasons that something bad would happen to your shift while you were working. But we will add more reasons. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, we have. For now, you can just click whichever one you want. We know there are only two. And at the bottom, under notes or comments, you can add some more information about what really happened. But for now, we've got we forgot and our battery died. Here we have our start day and time zone, and day and time zone. We know that the end time is correct, right? We know that this is when I actually clocked out. But this is not when I actually clocked in. So let's change that. When I click on this, it'll pull up this little calendar view as well as the time options at the bottom. Instead of 8:45 a.m., let's say that I actually started working at 1 a.m. I can use the little arrows you can see to go back to 1 a.m. and move the hours back and forth. Or I can just click on them and type in the numbers, and I can just click enter after that. And now it says I've been working from 1 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. this morning. Here's that consumer enrollment ID number. This is one of the required fields from the app that automatically populates. You don't need to change that or worry about that at all. And here's the service code. Again, from the app, it looks like Daniel was working respite from 1 a.m. to 8:45. If that was incorrect and you needed to change the service code, you could. As you can see, Daniel, as an employee, has personal supports, respite, or behavioral supports. So it could be any which one of these, right? Whichever is correct. ADL codes are not required. It shows that it's required here in the testing environment. It's not required for you. These ADL codes, you can choose as many as you want, but you certainly do not have to. Some people think it is interesting to track what you do in a day. If that's you, go right ahead, but there's no need to fill these out. Location, again, this is also the same as from the app, and it'll ask you if you were home, community, or remote. Looks like remote was selected in the app, and that's fine if that's correct. Again, notes, phone number, and comments are not required. And you can declare under penalty of perjury that all is true and correct. And now you can submit your adjustment. If you forget to complete a required field, it will highlight the field in red and make you fill it out before you can successfully adjust the shift. Once you adjust a shift, the status is approved. It assumes you're adjusting the shift correctly, right? So now we've moved from a submitted shift to an approved shift by adjusting it. And scrolling down, we can see Corey and Daniel. This is now a 7-hour and 45-minute shift. Day and time, respite, remote. Here we can see the original EVV shift details, right? The original 14 seconds of the shift. We can see the reason and the exception that I gave. And we can see that now the shift is not EVV compliant because, again, we changed that starting time. In the shift history, we can see Daniel submitted, Daniel adjusted, and Daniel approved. Boom, boom. Again, Daniel has submitted, Daniel has adjusted, Daniel's job here is done. It's off to Corey, the employer, to approval lock this shift. Let's go back to view all shifts, and I'll show you how to deny a shift. Here we are on the shifts page, and as you can see, here are all of our little shifts. Here's the one we just did for 7 hours and 45 minutes. Now, this is a lot of shifts to look at because it's showing us multiple shifts from multiple weeks. If you too are looking at a long list of shifts, you can use these up here to filter the results. Consumer is the same as the employer or participant. If Daniel worked for multiple people, he could search by employer here and pull up just the shifts he worked for Corey, just the shifts he worked for Joel. Here, you can see we have the start and the end time. You can look for specific shifts in a specific time period, right? Oh, what did I work between this day and this day? That's where you could search for that. But probably the most useful is this status section. As an employee, what we're doing is our goal is to move shifts from submitted to approved. So what I would want to do is come in and search for submitted shifts, right? Click submitted and search. And now this will pull up only my shifts that still have a submitted status. These are the shifts that I could then work on to approve them. But let's go in and deny a shift. Here's one that I need to deny because my nephew grabbed my phone, clocked me in and out. How frustrating. Let me deny this shift. I'm going to go into view the shift. And again, it shows me all the shift details. It's submitted, Corey and Daniel, hours, minutes, seconds, day and time. It was personal supports at home, or so my nephew says, right? This shift is EVV compliant, but we are going to deny it. Approve, adjust, deny. This time we will deny. Here's the shift you are denying. It's pretty easy to deny a shift. There's only 2 required things. One is the denial code, and there's only one option, right? The visit was logged in error. And you do have to declare under penalty of perjury that this is true and correct. And you can submit that denial. The status of the shift is now denied, and it shows you all the same information about the shift, same as before. This time it shows it's denied. If you do accidentally deny a shift, you can bring it back into play by adjusting it. But going back to view all shifts, I've shown you how to approve, adjust, and deny. The last thing I need to show you is how to create a shift. So to create one, we're going to go to the big blue button, create a new shift. This should look pretty familiar. It looks just like the adjust a shift page because it needs all the same information. First, it'll ask for the exception. And usually, of course, again, it's going to be that you completely forgot on Tuesday to clock in, clock out, right? But another interesting one that I want to point your attention to is EVV not required for this service. Technically, the only 2 service codes that are required to be EVV compliant, which means you have to use the Evvie app, are personal supports, and respite. If you're working personal supports and respite, you must use the Evvie app to be EVV compliant. If you are using other service codes like community development or behavioral supports or any other service code at all, that does not have to be EVV compliant. Technically, you do not have to use the app. You can come right in here to the Evvie portal and create those new shifts from scratch. I don't know you and I don't know your life, right? I don't know what will be easiest for you. But what I would recommend as a best practice is still using the Evvie app, even for something like community development or behavioral supports, etc., because it is easy to use the Evvie app to clock in and out in real time. It means you're less likely to forget. And it means that you can come into the portal and batch approve as opposed to having to spend a lot of time in this create a new shift section, creating each individual shift. Again, I don't know you, I don't know your life, but if I were you, I would keep using the Evvie app just for everything because I think it does make it easier in the end. However, EVV not required for this service is a really important one to keep in mind for things like paid time off or sick and safe leave, vacation or holiday pay, something you would never clock in and out in real time, right? You don't need to know down to the second how long you were on vacation, right? You probably receive a set number of hours, 8 hours of sick and safe leave or 8 hours of holiday or vacation pay per day, whatever it may be, right? So if you were doing that, you would click EVV not required for this service, right? The reason would be EVV is not required for this service. In choosing a start day and end time, if you were trying to get just, a set number of hours, there's nowhere you can just put in like 8 hours of paid time off. You have to go in and select a specific time, right? Let's say this was Monday, we had some paid time off, and we're just going to say it was 9 a.m. on Monday to 5 p.m. on Monday. 9 to 5 is 8 hours, right? That's how you get your 8 hours of holiday or vacation pay. The consumer is the same as the employer, right? So it's just Corey. And if I were really doing paid time off, vacation, holiday, sick and safe leave, I would find those options under service codes. However, as you'll remember, Daniel, our test employee, only has personal supports, respite, and behavioral supports. He does not have paid time off, sick and safe, anything like that in the budget for him. If he did, he would see that. And if you have vacation, holiday, etc. in the budget for you, you should see that here. If you don't, let us know, right? Put in that customer service ticket or give us a call so we can figure out why it's not appearing for you. So Daniel has personal supports and respite. Those two service codes are required to be EVV compliant. So for our example here, let's say that on Monday, we actually were doing 8 hours of behavioral supports, which do not have to be EVV compliant. Again, ADL codes are not required. The location is, though. The location, same as the app, it's home, community, or remote. Let's say we were at home, and before we can create this shift, we need to declare under penalty of perjury that all is true and correct. Now we can create the shift. Woohoo! The shift has been created and the status is submitted. It's just in that very first step, right? Same as the app. When I clock in and out on the app and the shift comes to the portal, it's in the submitted status. If I come into the portal and create a new shift with that big blue button, status submitted, right? Scrolling down here, we can see it's an 8-hour shift with Corey and Daniel. We have our start day and time, end day and time. Service code is behavioral supports. Location is home. Here are those reasons I gave. We can see that it is not EVV compliant, right? We don't know the real start and end time of the shift. All we have is my word for it, and my word is not EVV compliant. And we can see here that Daniel, the employee, submitted the shift. And right away, it gives us our options to approve, adjust, or deny. So that's how you go one by one, right? That's how you can approve, adjust, deny, and create brand new shifts from scratch in the Evvie portal as an employee. Now I want to show you how to batch approve and show you just how easy it can be to come in and batch approve all your shifts for the week. To go back to that page where we have that option, I'm going to click on the Evvie portal button to go back to that Evvie portal main landing page where it lists all my shifts. Here you can see those shifts we've been approving and working on, but we still have some that are submitted, right? We still have some that are just hanging out in that submitted status. Instead of going one by one through those, let's go in a batch. To go through a batch, instead of going to view all shifts, we're going to go to view my weekly timesheet. When we go to view my weekly timesheet, it'll show us all the shifts from just this week, and we can batch approve them. Here we see it's just this week and literally just the days of this week so far. You know, the system does not show you the future. It only shows you what has been. So down here, we can see that we have all these same shifts, right? Here's the days, the people, the times. We can see that this was respite, personal supports, respite, and we can see the status, and we can see the total number of hours worked this week. Right now, it looks like Daniel has 16 hours for the week. If you're looking at this at the end of the week for you, you should see 40 or 20 or whatever you are approved to work for in a week. You can see here at the bottom that we can also view previous weeks. We can go back in time to view weeks that have also happened. This is important to keep in mind because every pay period has 2 weeks in it, right? If you're going in just at the end of the pay period, you'll want to go in and make sure you're approving both weeks. In this test environment, I have to go week by week, but in the real environment there's also a drop-down menu where you can search by the pay period, which is a little bit easier, right? But scrolling back up to the top here, you'll see I also have a download as PDF button. If you wanted to save this for your records or print it out in your files, you could do that. But here are our 2 buttons, batch approve and batch lock as approved. As an employee, as Daniel in here, my goal is to come in and turn submitted shifts into approved, right? So my goal is going to be to batch approve these shifts. I'm not going to click batch lock approve. Batch lock approve, approval lock, that's that last third step that in our team, only the employer does. And right now, actually, the system won't let me batch lock anything because for an employee to batch lock, the employer would have to have batch approved or approved one by one, right? That's, again, going back to the fact that the system is so flexible and it will let you do a lot of different things. That flexibility is great, but it does leave room for confusion. This is why, again, I would make sure that in your team, you decide what your plan is and everybody sticks to their specific roles. So I, as an employee, am here to approve things. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to click batch approve, and this time it will filter and show me only the shifts for the week that are still in a submitted status. So here they all are. To select them all, I can toggle them on and off with this button. You can see when I turn it on, all of the shifts become selected here on the side, and when I turn it off, they become deselected. So let's say I'm going to select them all, and I can go through and take one last look, right? I want to make sure my time card is correct for my employer. This one's submitted. This looks good, looks good. Oh, not this one. This one I need to go back and adjust. Looks good, looks good. Oh, this one I need to go back and deny. And you can see I can deselect any one of them and the rest stay selected, no problem, right? So let's say I'm going to approve those few shifts there. I'm going to declare under penalty of perjury that all is true and correct and submit my approvals. We have successfully approved those 4 shifts. Hooray! Daniel has approved. Off to Corey, the employer, they go to be approval locked in the next step. You can see that once you approve those shifts, it brings you back to the view all shift page where you can easily go to see we've approved. Oh, here are those 2 that I deselected. Do I need to adjust them and deny them, right? It knows that that's your next step for whatever you deselected, which is kind of cool. So as Daniel in the Evvie portal, we are done. It's time to move along and act as Corey, the employer, to now approval lock these shifts. So I'm going to sign out as Daniel, the employee, and go back to my bookmarked page. My bookmarked page, again, is this main login button with the big blue button. I'm going to, again, this URL is just the staging and practice one, right? This is not for you. This is just the demo URL. You have your own that's correct, right? But I'm going to click on the big blue button. And this time I'm going to log in as Corey, the employer. Some of you may do the same, right? Have both logins on the same computer and toggle back and forth. Now that I've logged in here as Corey, the employer, I can tell I'm on an employer account because I see the Evvie portal and the participant dashboard. The participant dashboard is a view-only version of the budget. It shows all the different line items. It shows support broker information, vendor payment information, employee contact information, all different kinds of really useful materials, and it will continue to be built out as we move into the future. But right now, we're just going to focus on the Evvie portal because we want Daniel to get paid. So again, ignore this temporary loading screen. Do not click that sign in button. And here we are on the Evvie portal main landing page. It looks very familiar, doesn't it? It looks exactly the same for Corey, the employer, as it does for Daniel, the employee. Corey can see all of Daniel's shifts here, and Corey can see all the different statuses, right, for this week. At the bottom, Corey also has view all shifts, and Corey has view my weekly timesheet. This is where Corey could go one by one to approval lock these shifts, or go to view my weekly timesheet to do it in a batch. I'm going to show you both. Let's go one by one first. When we go to view all shifts, you'll see it looks the same for Corey as an employer. He can create a new shift, and it also lists shifts here that he can approve, adjust, or deny. Approval lock or approve and deny. Now, again, this is related to the flexibility of the system. Just because Corey can adjust a shift, deny a shift, or create a new shift from scratch doesn't mean he should if that's not what makes sense on the team. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Let's go into this approved shift and let's approval lock it. Again, we can see all of the shifts here that we've done today, and they each have a view shift button where Corey can go in one by one. So let's approval lock. This has been submitted, approved, and now we're going to go through and approval lock it. Status approved, Corey and Daniel. It shows us the hours, minutes, seconds of the shift, service code, the location, day and time. The shift is EVV compliant. Daniel submitted, Daniel approved. It's time for us to lock as approved. And again, you can see, look, it also gives Corey the option to adjust or deny. The reason I would recommend not having the employer adjust or deny a shift in this particular setup we have is because if Corey comes into this approved shift and adjusts it, this shift will stay in the approved status, and that will bump it back to Daniel, the employee, to approval lock it. If Daniel, the employee, is not used to approval locking shifts, he's used to just getting shifts to that approved status and being done, Daniel might see this approved adjusted shift and not realize that it's actually his next step to approval lock it to make sure he gets paid for that. That's the kind of confusion we want to avoid, right? If Corey, the employer, comes in and sees a shift that needs to be adjusted, Corey should just, hey, Daniel, I see you have a shift that needs to be adjusted. I'm not going to approval lock it yet. Can you go in and adjust it or deny it or change whatever about it needs to be changed so that I can approval lock it? That will keep it in this setup, right? Where Daniel is the one approving, adjusting, denying, creating, making sure, he has the responsibility of making sure this time card is perfect so that then Corey can just come in and approval lock. We said this shift is good to go. Let's go ahead and approval lock it. Lock it as approved. Here's the shift you're locking. Gives you one last chance to review those essential details before at the bottom, we must declare under penalty of perjury that all is true and correct and lock that shift. Status approval locked. Hooray. This shift of 34 seconds of respite at home has been approved. Approval locked. We can see it's EVV compliant and it's been submitted, approved, and approval locked. This is the goal. This is exactly what you want to see. You want to see submitted, approved, approval locked with an EVV compliant stamp of approval. This is the dream right here. This is the goal. You can see too that now that this shift has been approval locked, all of our colorful buttons at the bottom to approve, adjust, or deny are gone. Once a shift is approval locked, it's been locked in. If you discover that a mistake has been made, then the shift has been approval locked accidentally, only the ARC Central Chesapeake region can change it for you. You would need to contact us, open that customer service ticket, or give us a call and let us know which shift specifically needs to be adjusted. Both Daniel and Corey have confirmed multiple times under penalty of perjury that this shift is true and correct, right? So if there really is an issue, that's why it rests with the ARC to fix it. Back at view all shifts, I just want to show you that just like Daniel, here's our approval locked shift. Just like Daniel could filter these shifts, so can Corey. Corey can search by employee, right? Maybe Corey has 6 employees and he could search by employee name to pull up only that specific person's shifts. Here, again, Corey could choose a particular time period, and Corey could also search by status. What Corey's usually going to do is search for approved statuses, right? Because his goal is to move approved statuses to approval locked. So let's click approved and search. And you can see here that now it lists just the approved statuses. And you can see it also lists approved statuses from back in time, right? From earlier weeks that haven't been approval locked. If it's the end of the pay period and you do forget to approval lock something, or there's a shift and you realize later you weren't paid for it, your paycheck was short, come in and double check to make sure what was the status of that shift. Did it ever make it to the approval locked status? Or is your shift from January 6th still stuck at approved, right? Somebody will need to go in and approval lock that shift, right? But let's go through an approval lock in a batch. Going back to that Evvie portal main landing page here, right? It lists all the shifts for the employees. Instead of going into view all shifts to go one by one, let's go into view my weekly timesheet to do that in a batch. So here we are with view my weekly timesheet. And again, it shows Corey just the days of the week so far. And here again, we have the days, the people, the times, the service code of respite, personal sports respite, statuses, and hours. At the bottom, it does total it up. And it shows that there are actually 2 different employees that Corey has, right? Here's Taj Gibson. Here's their 6 hours. And here's ourselves, Daniel, with 16 hours. So you can see that the weekly timesheet shows you in chronological order all the shifts for these employees, and it totals them all up at the bottom. Kind of handy. Again, there's these previous weeks and next weeks, right? You can see previous weeks to make sure that as an employer, you're approval locking both weeks. Or remember, in your final environment, there is a drop-down menu to go by the pay period, so 2 weeks at a time. The employer can also download this as a PDF to have for their records if they want, or print it out. And here we have our batch approve and batch approval lock buttons. As an employer, Corey is going to ignore the batch approve button, right? Corey's job is to batch lock as approved. This goes back to that flexibility and making sure everybody kind of stays in their lane and does what they are responsible to do, right? If Corey approves things and moves things to approved, Then it's Daniel or Taj's turn to approval lock. We don't want any confusion, right? So what we're going to do as the employer is batch lock as approved. When we click batch lock, it will sort and filter. It will show us just the shifts with an approved status for the week. Here are the shifts. You can see Daniel, 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 Daniel. Here's our times. Here's the status. And once again, I can toggle them all on and off with that toggle button. And I can also deselect any that are wrong that I need to go back and fix. As Corey, the employer, I'm probably not going to go back and fix that. Again, I'm probably just going to say, hey, Daniel, this shift from January 25th, it's shift number 502. It's showing approved, but it's 0 hours, 0 minutes. I don't want to approval lock that. Can you go in and adjust it or deny it or whatever you need to do, right? And down here, we're going to declare under penalty of perjury that all is true and correct, and lock all as approved. Successfully locked 4 shifts. Hooray! Daniel gets paid. Daniel gets paid for any approval locked shifts. Those are the ones that get sent right to the ARC Central Chesapeake Region's payroll department. So, final kind of thoughts and food for thought as we look ahead using this new system is that for your team, you're going to want to decide who's responsible for what, right? What's your pattern? Probably it's going to end up being employee submits, employee approves, employer approval locks. And you're going to want to decide when you need to do all of these steps in your team. Some people are going to be the kind of people who clock in and out and then go right into the portal as employees to approve their time, right? Some people are going to do it a couple times a week, and some are the kind who are going to wait to the end of the pay period, right? And whatever you choose, right? Whatever works for you and your team is fine. But you are going to want to make sure that all the shifts that need to be approval locked are approval locked by Monday, those Mondays at 5 p.m. Or according to the payroll calendar. So what you'll need to do is decide, when do employees need to have all their shifts submitted and approved by, so that the employer has time to approval lock things by that Monday at 5 p.m. Do employees need to have their shifts approved by Saturday at 2 p.m., Sunday at noon? How much time do you as an employer need to get those shifts approval locked? So that is the kind of step-by-step training of clocking in and out as an employee, going into the Evvie portal as an employee to approve, adjust, deny, and create, and then going in as an employer to approval lock. Once you get very comfortable and familiar with the Evvie app, you'll see just how quick it really is when there's not somebody giving you a minute of explanation for each click to clock in and out. And if you get really comfortable using the Evvie app, clocking in and out successfully, you'll be able to go into the portal as an employee, review those shifts and say, yep, that's what I worked. And you can approve those shifts, right? Go in as the employer. Yep, all these look good. Approval lock in a batch. It can be actually very quick and very simple if you're keeping up with your Evvie app and doing a good job there. So if you have any questions, if you're running into any error codes or just policy-based questions too, if you have specific questions about your unique situation and how to log something or what our policies are around something, definitely give us a phone call or open that customer service ticket. To open a customer service ticket, you can go to the ARC Central Chesapeake Region's website, thearcccr.org, and on our self-directed services page under forms and resources, there is a link to open a customer service ticket. You can also find that link to open a customer service ticket at the bottom of pretty much every email you've ever received from us. We always put it right at the bottom. So feel free to get in touch if you're having any issues or questions related to the Evvie app or Evvie portal, FMS1, anything like that. Thank you so much.